The airport was loud with rolling suitcases and boarding calls when one quiet moment changed everything. A teenage girl stood at the gate clutching her backpack, excited and nervous like anyone flying alone for the first time. She had on headphones, a hoodie, and a ticket with her name printed clearly. But when the pilot glanced down the jet bridge and saw her, he stopped walking. What happened next stunned everyone watching. Whispers spread as the pilot spoke sharply to the crew, refusing to step onto the plane. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, confused as boarding suddenly paused. The reason given sounded vague at first, a concern, a feeling, protocol. But it quickly became clear that this black teen, calm and respectful, was the reason the flight wasn't moving. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stood there, realizing she was being singled out in front of a plane full of strangers. What no one at that gate knew was who she really was, or the quiet power she carried with her. While the airline staff scrambled to smooth things over, calls were being made behind the scenes. Policies were being checked. Names were being recognized. And the pilot's decision, made in seconds, was about to trigger consequences far beyond a delayed departure. As tension thickened in the terminal and the clock kept ticking, the question hung in the air: would the airline stand by this choice, or was this the moment everything would come crashing down? Because within minutes, one unexpected move would ground more than just a single flight. The girl's name was Maya, and this trip mattered more than anyone at the gate realized. She had saved for months, working weekends and skipping nights out, just to be on this flight. It wasn't a vacation. It was a chance and invitation that could change her future. She had followed every rule, arrived early, passed security without issue, and kept her head down the moment she sensed eyes on her. Inside the cockpit, the pilot stood firm. He spoke in low tones about safety and authority, leaning on airline policy without pointing to anything specific. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Nothing in Maya's record, ticket, or behavior raised concern. Still, the boarding door stayed open, and the delay grew harder to explain. Passengers began checking their phones, some annoyed, others curious. A few noticed Maya standing alone and started to wonder why. At the gate counter, a supervisor quietly pulled up Maya's booking. Her profile triggered a pause. Not a warning, something else. A note that didn't explain much but suggested she wasn't just another passenger. The supervisor made a call, then another. Each conversation ended with the same instruction: wait. Meanwhile, the pilot's refusal was logged into the airline system, flagged for review. What was meant to be a quick judgment call was now becoming a documented decision. Cameras in the terminal kept rolling. Time kept passing. And with every minute, the situation grew heavier, more complicated. Maya felt it too. She sensed that something larger was unfolding, something she hadn't planned for. She tightened her grip on her backpack, unaware that the next move wouldn't come from her, the pilot, or even the crew, but from a place the airline never expected to hear from so fast. Across the terminal, reactions began to split. Some passengers brushed it off as another airline delay, while others couldn't ignore the way Maya stood apart, watched but not helped. A middle-aged woman near the window whispered to her seatmate that something felt wrong. A father traveling with his son noticed the girl shaking hands and felt a knot form in his chest. Still, no one stepped forward. Airports had a way of making people stay silent. Behind the counter, the supervisor received a message that made her sit up straighter. It didn't give answers, only urgency. She glanced toward the cockpit, then at Maya, then back at her screen. Whatever the situation was, it was now above her pay grade. She asked the gate agents to pause all boarding announcements and keep passengers seated. That only added to the confusion. Inside the cockpit, the pilot felt the pressure shift. He had expected support, maybe a quick compromise. Instead, he was being asked to explain himself again, this time in writing. His tone sharpened as he insisted he was following procedure, protecting his aircraft, his crew. But even he could sense that the ground beneath him wasn't as solid as before. Maya's phone buzzed softly. A single message from a number she didn't recognize: "Stay where you are." Her heart raced. She hadn't told anyone about the delay yet. She hadn't asked for help. And yet, somehow, someone knew. Outside the gate area, 2 airline executives were pulled from a meeting and rushed toward the terminal. Security shifted positions, not aggressively, but noticeably. The flight number disappeared from the departure board, replaced with a neutral status that raised even more questions. As eyes turned toward the gate and whispers grew louder, one thing became clear: the decision to refuse this flight had triggered something far bigger than anyone planned. And whatever was coming next would force everyone involved to choose where they stood. The terminal felt tighter now, like the air itself was holding its breath. Boarding screens flickered, and the flight's delay stretched from minutes into something harder to explain. An announcement came over the speaker, carefully worded and empty of detail, only fueling more frustration. Passengers stood, craning their necks toward the gate, trying to piece together what was really happening. Maya was finally offered a seat near the window, away from the crowd. An attendant spoke gently, offering water, asking if she was okay. Maya nodded, though her chest felt heavy. She replayed the pilot's look in her mind, the way it lingered, the way it made her feel small in a place. He was supposed to feel safe. She wondered if getting on this flight was worth all of this, but another part of her refused to move. Behind a closed office door, voices rose and fell. Airline managers debated risk, reputation, and responsibility. Legal terms were thrown around. So were words like fairness and accountability. Every option seemed to carry consequences. Outside that door, the pilot waited, arms crossed, jaw tight, sensing that control was slipping away. Then the unexpected happened. A notification went out across the airline's internal system, marked urgent. Flights in nearby gates paused. Crew members checked their tablets in confusion. The ripple spread fast, like a warning no one could ignore. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time, the message was clearer. They're coming to you. Stay calm. She looked up as footsteps approached, heavier now, purposeful. Passengers noticed too. Conversations stopped. Phones lifted. Somewhere above the terminal, decisions were being finalized that would affect schedules, careers, and an entire airline's image. And as a small group of officials stepped into view, eyes locked on Maya's gate, the truth hovered just out of reach. Whatever happened next wouldn't just decide this flight, it would expose something the airline could no longer hide. The officials didn't stop at the gate. They walked past it, straight toward Maya, their expressions serious but not unkind. One of them spoke quietly to the attendant, then glanced at the pilot, who stiffened as soon as he realized who they were. These weren't local managers. Their badges carried titles rarely seen on the terminal floor. That alone sent a murmur through the crowd. A new detail began to circulate among the crew, whispered but sharp. Maya wasn't just traveling for opportunity, she was connected to an ongoing airline compliance review. Not as a complaint. Not as a witness. Something closer to a test. The timing, the route, the aircraft assignment, it all suddenly fell.